Hello, I'm Janice Brown and I'm representing the team from UHL. I'm here on my own today. If you put the next slide and I'll just introduce who the team are. So our project group, this was our information support rounds was part of the National Cancer Collaborative project in relation to the survey results from the Cancer Patient Experience Survey. So as you can see, we had our chief nurse, she was our exec sponsor. We had assistant chief nurse for patient satisfaction, lead and deputy lead cancer nurse. We included the matron for oncology, and also our Macmillan Information and Support Officer. We had a patient representative on our committee, and we also had a patient survey volunteer as well to help us collect the data. Next slide, please. So the idea of the mobile information and support round was to improve the opportunities for patients who were in hospital to discuss their worries and fears on one of our oncology wards, with the aim to eventually roll it out to other areas in the oncology area as well. So it was a pilot initially. So we looked at the Cancer Patient Experience Survey results in 2018, and it showed that only 48% of our patients felt they had that opportunity to discuss their worries and fears with staff when they were an inpatient, and the national average at that time was 53%. So we really wanted to sort of get up there to within the 50-53% mark. So the inpatients we surveyed were during April, May and June. Those patients were April, May and June of 2017. And we dug down and we found that most of those were being cared for on the oncology and haematology wards. Next slide, please. So the objective was, as we said, to improve that opportunity for the patients to speak regarding their worries and fears. And we were hoping with that we'd be able to improve the overall experience for the patients while in hospital, and we could also address other problems linked to the that patients had raised linked to the Cancer Patient Survey, as well as the patient surveys that we do locally within our ward areas. That's why the matron was involved, as well as our supporting information officer, so that he could help to address any problems that the patients raised that were clinical. We also wanted to engage the ward teams to join the weekly rounds to improve their knowledge of the concerns that the patients may have and how to access the information support available for patients. So it's a little bit of a teaching exercise for them as well. Next slide, please. So why did we do it? Well, if you think about in the old days, the newspaper trolley used to come along, it'd have the papers on, Mars bars, Snickers, whatever you used to call them in those days. And patients would get out of bed, it'd be their focal point of the day. They're waiting for the trolley to come round. They might meet another patient at the side of it. They can have a bit of a chat with the person who's bringing the papers around. So it was like a focus, really, rather than the aim of the project just to wheel a trolley through. It was a focus and a way to engage in conversation. So as you can see, that was our team stood with our Macmillan Information and Support Round trolley, which I have with me here. If you want to just do the next slide, please. I'll try and twist my camera around so you can just see the trolleys with me, keeping me covered. So why did we do it? So patients that receive good information, it's been researched by Macmillan, and they found that if they are listened to sensitively, it helps them feel supported and listened to, and they would hopefully rate their experience more favourably. And also the provision of information gives them, it empowers them to care for themselves a little bit more, which is what we want to do with the caring, living with them beyond now, the personalised care agenda. Could you go to the next slide, please? So we looked at the CPES data and the local patient experience for any themes, and we agreed that we would do the information and support round just on one ward initially, for one time a week, because we realised that the weekly length of stay for most patients was around about 5 days. So we aimed to go for the middle of the week, like on a Wednesday. And the trolley information was pre-populated, looking at our holistic needs assessments and the top concerns that were raised on that. So we populated the information for the things that the patients were identifying as problems the most. So what happened was the oncology matron and the Macmillan Information Support Officer would go up to the ward, they'd introduce themselves to the patients, ask them if they've got any worries and fears, and they'd also have the trolley with them as well. and the patients could either have a chat with them or they could actually just help themselves to resources if they wished to. And in order to find out whether it was working, whether it was of value to patients, we conducted a post-ward round electronic survey with an iPad. And we had a survey volunteer who could help the patients if they weren't quite computer savvy, just to help them to work the iPads and fill out their comments. Do you want to go on to the next one, please? So we had to look at the bridges and the blockers. So the bridges were staff engagement and curiosity. It was really good because they got to know the team. They also got to know what the patients wanted to find out. There was prompt referral to the services following the information and support round, and we found that the concerns were things around finance, wig referrals, psychological support, some of them clinical, as we said, and the matron could go up to the doctors, etc., and find out if there was anything to help with the patient's discharge, for instance. It also gave the patient an opportunity to have a conversation without feeling that they were wasting people's time. It was a learning opportunity, we said, for the staff, and it encouraged the patients and their families to engage in conversations as well, because quite often the relatives were there at the time. We had a few blockers. Some of the cohort of patients changed. They weren't all cancer patients. The staff availability to stay in the rounds alongside the information support officer matron, that was difficult at times because, as you can imagine, it's a busy oncology ward. Sometimes the patients didn't feel well enough after the round to fill out the feedback, so we couldn't always get the feedback from the patients. And also staff feeling competent to ask the questions and provide a timely response. And there were some language barriers because Leicestershire hospitals, we are in a very multicultural and diverse area, so there were some language barriers. We did do an ethnic breakdown to the responses, yes, we did. That's just a little bit of data about the CPES survey. So it just shows from the years from 2015 to 2018. There was no real change in that opportunity for patients to discuss their worries or fears. That's why we wanted to act on that. Next slide, please. So the way we collected the data was the baseline survey initially with the EHNAs, and we went and did a ward round as well, just to find out what types of issues patients were raising and what their concerns were. We collected the data. We had 120 patients. That was up until March when obviously COVID came along, but at the point when we were reporting back, there was 120 patients that we managed to see. And we did the patient questionnaire post-ward round on the iPads. We also did staff surveys to see how they thought the ward rounds were going, what they were learning as they went along. We did SPC charts, which were really difficult. We weren't used to that sort of thing, but it was a new tool that we learnt about. And we also used PDSA cycles just to sort of change things as we went along, how we caught the data, etc. Next one, please. So these were the people we engaged with. There was a patient representative, survey volunteer, the patient experience committee. We presented to them to see to gather their feedback as well. We also presented to the personalised care and cancer steering group for our local cancer alliance. We presented to the cancer nurse specialists and allied health professional forum. We tweeted on social media and we put it on our Facebook page, and we put it in our local support centre in newsletter. We were in the process of doing a story so far. Next slide, please. So these were just some of the comment bubbles, really. Patients found it quite useful to have someone to talk to. We had one that said no, where maybe that they'd already had information beforehand and they've got most of the leaflets already. Next slide, please. Probably the sustainability and the rollout finally was to deliver the information support and across more wards, involving the staff, and continue to collect the patient information, and to, obviously with COVID it's been a little bit difficult and we're looking at different ways to implement it now because we couldn't always go into the ward areas, but we are aiming to roll it out to other wards as well. That's it. So we have had positive feedback from patients and staff. It's been supported by the Trust as a new innovation, and we're hoping to get some feedback finally from the CPES. But like we say, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.